Hey, my name is Florian and I'm building pipe0, which is a very new and very flexible API for data enrichment and prospecting. You can build completely new types of UI on pipe0, but you can also replace many existing SaaS solutions you may use for things like lead routing, email customization, CRM integrations, and so on using pipe0. It's really cool, and I think it's worth a couple minutes of your day. But let me show you how it works. So what you see here is a standard request to pipe0. You can see there's an authorization header, and you can see we're currently in the sandbox environment. Here we can test our requests without consuming credits. You can also see there's a pipes array and then an inputs array. The inputs array is the data we start with. So when we talk about data enrichment, that always means we start from some amount of existing information. This can come from a user signing up or our CRM or our data warehouse. This also doesn't have to be data on a person. This can be data on a company. And this doesn't have to be one input object. This can actually be up to 10,000 input objects per request. So you can see this is a very ambitious and scalable API they can use for millions of input records spread across multiple requests, of course. Here, in the short time we have, I want to do a whole lot. I want to show you how to fetch the work email of a person using the data we have. But then I want to take things even further. I want to additionally validate that work email, but then I want to build in addition a full automation flow. I want to fetch the LinkedIn profile URL for the person. I want to fetch their entire LinkedIn profile. I want to use an LLM to figure out if that person would make a good prospective customer. So I want to evaluate if they meet our ICP criteria. If they do, I want to compose a personalized sales email using their LinkedIn profile. And then as a last step, I want to send out this email using Resend, which is pipe0's provider of choice. You may have a different one. Cool. So as you can see, this is a whole lot. So let's get started. The first thing I want to do is find the work email from the data we have. And for this, you can go to pipe0.com. There's a docs page and then a pipe catalog where you can see all the available enrichment functions. And if you do so, you find the pipe that is called people work email waterfall. And this pipe will take the name of the person as well as the company website URL and find a work email. And it will do so in a waterfall motion. So that means it will try the first provider. If that provider has the email address, it is returned. If the first provider doesn't have that email address, the second provider is tried, and so on. The good thing here is you only build for the provider that successfully returns a result. This is already great and a lot. We just with one line of code, we pretty much integrated with about 5 different APIs without buying any additional subscriptions or reading any API docs. But often we want more control over which providers are tried, the sequence in which they are tried. And to gain more control, we can pass a config object with an array of providers. And if we pass this config object, we have full control over which providers are tried in which order. Adding a new provider is as simple as adding an additional entry to this array. And as you can see, this is kind of how easy it is to integrate with all these different APIs. We didn't read API docs, but we also didn't spend time thinking about normalizing rate limits between these providers, thinking about what happens when the credit balance for one of these providers hits 0, and all these problems that come when you want to integrate with many third-party APIs. These are all things that pipe0 takes care of in the background. All right, this is already a great start. So we found the email address for our prospect. And as a next step, when we find the email address, we want to be extra sure that this email is valid. Because when we see a lot of emails that bounce, this just hurts our sender reputation. So we add an additional step where we validate the email address using 0 bounce. Again, we don't have to read any API documentation. We go to the pipe0 docs, we find that pipe, and then we simply add it to the pipeline here. The only special thing here is that this pipe will produce an output field that is called work email that we have to reference in this pipe. But this pipe expects their input field to be a generic email field instead of a work email field. So here we have to point it to the correct name in the config object so that everything works. All right, we did a whole lot, but we're not done. The next part might be a bit of a speed run, but it will show you what's possible. So as a next step, we want to build an automation that sends a sales email for prospects that fit our ICP criteria. For this, we add a pipe called people profile URL name. So this means people data find the LinkedIn profile URL from the name of a person. And with this pipe, we hopefully find the LinkedIn profile URL. Once we have that, we use an additional pipe that will fetch the LinkedIn profile in a waterfall motion again. Once we have the full LinkedIn profile as a JSON object, we use this for our LLM prompt as an input. And here we specify that we're an SDR and we want to determine if a given prospect fits the ICP criteria for our company. And we output a Boolean field that just says fits our ICP criteria, and then a reason that gives us an explanation as to why the LLM classified a given user as fitting or non-fitting our ICP criteria. And now we have these fields available for automation as well. So what do we do next? We define an additional pipe, but we only execute that pipe conditionally. We say only if the LLM marked the user as an ICP criteria or fits our ICP criteria, only if it fits, if that flag was set to true, we compose a personalized sales email. And here in the prompt, we use the full JSON profile as an input. And as a last step, we use resend to send that email out. Here you can also see we use a custom connector. That means we previously logged into pipe0 and saved our API key that we can then reference in our request. So the email is sent using our resend account. And as you can see, this has only been 7 minutes, but we did a lot. We integrated with about 20 different APIs, didn't have to read any API documentation, didn't have to think about data sanitation, credit balances, rate limiting, all that stuff that gets very hard at scale. And we have a scalable data and automation pipeline that will scale over millions of records with pipe0. And this will live right in our code, where it's very easy for developers to iterate on these solutions. And as an additional bonus, you can even log into the pipe0 dashboard, and there you see full analytics on how these pipes perform, how often they found an email address, how often specific actions have been performed, and have full transparency. This is all stuff you don't have to build. All right, this was a whole lot, but this was, I think, a good introduction on how pipe0 works and how to build automations with pipe0. I had a lot of fun showing you this. If you have any questions or encouragement, always feel free to just drop it. Cool. Talk soon.